Empires are remembered for their monuments, marble temples, vast amphitheaters, aqueducts stretching across valleys, roads running straight to the horizon. But behind the grandeur of Rome stood something far less visible and far more brutal: slavery. The Roman world did not merely tolerate slavery, it depended on it. To understand how slavery powered the Roman economy, we must first understand the scale of Rome itself. At its height, the Roman Empire controlled territory stretching from Britain to North Africa, from Spain to the Near East. Its population may have exceeded 60 million people. In Italy alone, some historians estimate that enslaved individuals made up as much as 1/3 of the population. This was not a marginal institution. It was structural, it was foundational, it was everywhere. Unlike later systems of racialized slavery, Roman slavery was not based primarily on skin color. It was rooted in conquest. Rome was a military machine, and war produced captives. Those captives became property. Every time Roman legions defeated an enemy, whether in Gaul, Greece, Carthage, or Judea, thousands of prisoners were taken. After the destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE, and after campaigns in Greece and the eastern Mediterranean, entire populations were sold. Markets overflowed with human beings captured in war. The economy of expansion fed the economy of enslavement. As the Roman Republic expanded, conquered territories supplied a steady stream of labor. Generals returned to Italy not only with gold and tribute, but with people. These captives were auctioned in markets across the Mediterranean. The island of Delos became notorious as a major slave trading hub, capable of processing thousands in a single day. Slaves worked everywhere. In the countryside, they labored on vast agricultural estates known as latifundia. These estates produced grain, olives, and wine on a massive scale. Wealthy Roman elites invested heavily in land, and enslaved labor made large-scale farming profitable. Before Rome's expansion, many Italian farms had been small family operations, but as conquests flooded Italy with enslaved labor, wealthy landowners bought up smaller farms and consolidated them. Enslaved workers replaced free peasants. The rural economy shifted from independent farming to plantation-style production. This transformation had ripple effects. Displaced farmers migrated to cities like Rome in search of work. There, they joined an urban population increasingly dependent on state grain distributions. Slavery did not just produce goods, it reshaped demographics. In cities, enslaved people worked in households as cooks, cleaners, tutors, nurses, and clerks. Urban slavery could be highly visible. Wealthy Romans displayed status through the number of enslaved attendants they owned. Large households might include dozens or even hundreds of enslaved individuals. But slavery extended far beyond agriculture and domestic service. In mines and quarries, enslaved laborers endured some of the harshest conditions in the empire. Silver mines in Spain and gold mines in Dacia extracted immense wealth. Mining was dangerous, grueling, and often deadly. Life expectancy for enslaved miners was brutally short, yet the metals they extracted fueled coinage, military spending, and monumental construction. Construction itself relied heavily on enslaved labor. Roads, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and temples required vast manpower. While not all laborers were enslaved, slavery formed a substantial portion of the workforce that physically built the Roman world. Even education and administration were touched by slavery. Many enslaved Greeks, captured during Rome's eastern conquests, were highly educated. They served as tutors, physicians, and secretaries. Roman elites relied on their skills. In a striking irony, the empire that conquered Greece intellectually depended on Greek enslaved labor for cultural refinement. Slavery also powered commerce. Merchants used enslaved workers in workshops producing textiles, pottery, metal goods, and luxury items. Some enslaved individuals managed businesses on behalf of their owners. They kept accounts, supervised trade, and oversaw other laborers. In some cases, they handled significant financial responsibility. The Roman legal system treated enslaved people as property. They could be bought, sold, punished, or freed at an owner's discretion. Yet Roman slavery was complex. Manumission, the act of freeing a slave, was relatively common. Freed individuals, known as freedmen, could become Roman citizens, though with certain limitations. This created a strange economic dynamic. Enslaved individuals sometimes worked with the hope of eventual freedom. Some were allowed to accumulate personal savings, known as peculium, which they might use to buy their freedom. Owners, in turn, had incentive to maintain skilled slaves as productive assets. But we must not mistake complexity for kindness. Violence underpinned the system. Roman law permitted severe punishments. Enslaved people could be beaten, branded, or executed. Rebellion was met with extreme retaliation. The most famous slave revolt, led by Spartacus in 73 BCE, exposed the scale of unrest. Tens of thousands joined the uprising. When it was finally crushed, thousands of captured rebels were crucified along the Appian Way as a warning. The brutality was deliberate. Slavery required fear to function. Economically, slavery lowered labor costs for elites while increasing wealth concentration. Large landowners grew richer. Political power increasingly concentrated among those who controlled vast estates and enslaved workforces. This concentration destabilized the Roman Republic. Economic inequality widened. Urban unemployment rose. Political tensions intensified. Reformers like the Gracchi brothers attempted land redistribution in the 2nd century BCE, recognizing that small farmers were being displaced by slave-run estates. Their violent deaths revealed how entrenched elite interests had become. Thus, slavery did not merely power the economy, it shaped politics. Military expansion brought slaves. Slaves supported agricultural and industrial production. That production enriched elites. Wealth funded further expansion. Expansion produced more slaves. It was a cycle. But cycles can stall. By the 2nd century CE, Rome's territorial expansion slowed. Fewer large-scale conquests meant fewer war captives. The supply of enslaved labor tightened. Economic adjustments followed. Some landowners shifted towards tenant farming, using koloni, semi-free laborers bound to the land. As the empire evolved, so did its labor systems, yet slavery remained deeply embedded for centuries. The moral dimension of Roman slavery rarely appears in Roman economic records. To Roman elites, slavery was normal. Philosophers debated its nature, but few called for its abolition. It was seen as an inevitable feature of hierarchy. And yet, beneath the surface of economic efficiency lay constant tension. Enslaved people resisted in small and large ways through sabotage, escape, rebellion, and subtle acts of defiance. Owners lived with underlying fear. Laws required collective punishment if a master was killed by a slave, reflecting anxiety about insurrection. The Roman economy glittered with prosperity in its golden ages. Grain shipments fed massive urban populations. Trade networks spanned continents. Luxuries flowed into markets. But this prosperity rested on coerced labor. When we admire Roman engineering, architecture, and administration, we must also acknowledge the invisible labor force that sustained them. Slavery powered agriculture, mining, construction, domestic life, manufacturing, and commerce. It fueled wealth accumulation and imperial ambition. It reshaped rural Italy and filled urban households. It destabilized small farmers and concentrated power among elites. It was not a side note in Roman history, it was an engine. In many ways, Rome's economic strength was inseparable from its ability to extract both resources and people from conquered lands. The same legions that expanded borders supplied the labor force that maintained the empire. But reliance on slavery also carried long-term consequences. It discouraged technological innovation in some sectors where cheap labor was plentiful. It deepened inequality. It tied economic health to military conquest. Empires often appear invincible at their height. Marble shines, roads endure, armies march, but beneath Rome's grandeur lay chains. The story of how slavery powered the Roman economy is not only about production and profit, it is about human cost. It is about the paradox of a civilization that produced enduring law and architecture.